The question came out of nowhere. They were standing in a quiet museum hall, facing a famous painting of a princess in a golden gown. Everyone admired the jewels, the crown, the history. But 6-year-old Lily wasn't looking at any of that. She was looking at the princess's eyes. "Why does she look sad, Daddy?" Lily asked softly. Mark, a single father who worked double shifts just to afford moments like this, bent down beside his daughter. He'd never really looked at the painting before. Now he did, and for the first time, he saw it. The loneliness. The forced smile. The quiet pain behind all that beauty. "Maybe," he said slowly, "because people think having everything means you can't be unhappy." Lily frowned. "That's not fair." Those 3 words hit him harder than any bill or sleepless night ever had. As they walked away, Mark noticed an elderly museum guide sitting alone, wiping her eyes. On impulse, he stopped and asked if she was okay. She hesitated, then smiled sadly. "That painting," she explained, "was modeled after a real princess, one who lost her children and lived the rest of her life in silence. No one ever noticed. No one ever asked? Except today." The next week, Mark came back, with Lily. They brought handwritten notes from local kids, messages of kindness and hope, and asked the museum to place them beside the painting. The museum agreed. Soon visitors stopped rushing. They read. They reflected. Some even cried. Lily squeezed her father's hand. "She doesn't look so lonely now," she whispered. Mark smiled through tears. Sometimes, changing the world doesn't require power or money, just the courage to notice sadness, and the kindness to respond to it. A month later, the museum felt different. Mark noticed it the moment he walked in with Lily. People weren't rushing past the paintings anymore. They were standing quietly in front of the princess, reading the small notes pinned beside the frame. Notes written in crayon, pencil, shaky handwriting. Words like, "You are not alone, you were brave," and, "I see you." Lily beamed. "Daddy, they're still here." "Yes," Mark whispered. "And they matter." What Mark didn't expect was the woman waiting nearby, a well-dressed stranger with tired eyes and a guarded smile. She introduced herself as Eleanor Whitmore, a donor to the museum. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "That painting," she said, "saved my life." Mark froze. Eleanor explained that she had grown up wealthy but invisible. Expectations, pressure, loneliness, she had carried them silently for years. The day she saw the notes, written by children who knew nothing about her, something broke open inside her. "For the first time," Eleanor said, tears forming, "I felt understood." Lily stepped forward without fear. "Sometimes people smile even when they're hurting," she said simply. Eleanor knelt to Lily's level, overwhelmed. "You're very wise." The museum later invited Mark and Lily to speak at a small community event about kindness and noticing others. Mark almost refused. He wasn't a speaker, just a tired single dad. But Lily squeezed his hand. "We should," she said. "What if someone else needs it?" That night, Mark realized something powerful. Kindness doesn't echo loudly, but it travels far. And once it starts, it rarely stops where you expect it to. The community event was smaller than Mark expected, just a modest hall, folding chairs, and a mixed crowd of parents, seniors, and a few restless kids. Mark's hands shook as he stepped onto the stage with Lily. "I'm not a hero," Mark began honestly. "I'm just a dad who almost missed a question." A soft laugh moved through the room. He told them about the painting. About Lily's words. About how easy it is to walk past beauty without noticing pain. Lily stood beside him, holding her stuffed bear, listening like it mattered because to her, it did. When they finished, silence filled the room. Then an elderly man stood up. "My wife passed last year," he said, voice breaking. "People stopped asking how I was. Tonight, someone finally noticed." Soon others spoke. A teacher. A nurse. A teenager who admitted she felt invisible at school. The room turned into something unexpected, a safe place. After the event, the museum director approached Mark with an idea. The painting would become the center of a new exhibit called "The Quiet Feelings We Don't See." Visitors would be invited to leave messages, not just for the princess, but for anyone carrying silent pain. That night, as Mark tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at him seriously. "Daddy, do you think the princess knows we're helping?" Mark swallowed hard. "I think people like her do." Lily nodded, satisfied. "Then we should keep our promise." "What promise?" Mark asked. "To notice," she said. "Even when it's hard." As Mark turned off the light, he realized something profound. He hadn't just raised a kind child. She was quietly teaching him how to be a better human. The exhibit opened on a snowy Saturday morning. Mark almost didn't take Lily. Life was heavy, bills, deadlines, exhaustion. But Lily stood by the door in her coat, eyes hopeful. "The princess is waiting," she said. Inside the museum, the room was full. People from different walks of life stood shoulder to shoulder, reading hundreds of notes, now covering the wall beside the painting. Some smiled softly. Others cried without shame. Then something unexpected happened. A woman stepped forward, trembling. She introduced herself as the great-granddaughter of the real princess. Few people knew she existed. Fewer knew her story. "My family hid her sadness," the woman said. "We were ashamed of it. But today, you honored her truth." Her voice broke. The room went silent. She reached into her bag and held up a small, faded letter, written by the princess herself. The museum had never seen it. The letter spoke of loneliness, of wearing crowns that felt like cages, of wishing, just once, that someone would ask if she was okay. Lily squeezed Mark's hand. "That's why she looked sad," Lily whispered. The museum director announced that the letter would become a permanent part of the exhibit. The room erupted in quiet applause, the kind that comes from hearts, not hands. Mark felt tears on his face. Not from pride, but from humility. One small question from a child had uncovered a truth buried for generations. As they left, a stranger stopped Mark. "You don't know me," she said, "but today reminded me to call my daughter." Mark nodded. "That might be the most important thing that happens here." Outside, snow fell gently. The world hadn't changed completely. But it had paused. And sometimes, that's where healing begins. Years passed. Lily grew taller, louder, braver. The museum exhibit remained, but it evolved. The notes were no longer just for the princess. They were for anyone who needed to be seen. Veterans. Single parents. Grieving spouses. Children who felt invisible. Mark still worked hard, still worried about bills, still got tired. But something inside him had changed. He listened more. He noticed longer. One afternoon, Mark and Lily returned to the museum, now a tradition. Lily, nearly a teenager, stood in front of the painting quietly. "She doesn't look as sad anymore," Lily said. Mark studied the princess's face. The sadness was still there, but so was something else. Understanding. Acceptance. Maybe even peace. A little boy nearby tugged at his father's sleeve. "Why does she look sad?" the boy asked. Mark and Lily exchanged a glance. The father hesitated, unsure. Lily knelt beside the boy and smiled gently. "Sometimes," she said, "people carry heavy feelings inside. When we notice them, it helps." The boy nodded, thoughtful. As they walked away, Mark felt a lump in his throat. Kindness had come full circle. It hadn't stayed in a museum, or a painting, or a moment in time. It had moved, from a child's question, to a father's choice, to countless quiet acts of compassion. That night, Mark wrote a small note and placed it beside the exhibit. "To anyone reading this, your feelings matter, even if no one has asked yet." Lily squeezed his hand. "Daddy?" "Yes?" "I'm glad you listened that day." Mark smiled, eyes shining. "So am I." Because sometimes, the most powerful change in the world begins with a simple question, and someone who cares enough to answer it with kindness.